with people from the Cape for some reason. Maybe they have internet and Mpumalanga doesn't. But very interesting. We've been following each other for close to 6, 7 years now, and he is very interested in taxation and AI, and I'm very interested in destroying taxation using AI. So this conversation will be quite useful to both of us, I think. But Andre, hello and welcome to the show.
How's it, Roman? Thanks for having me, man. It's great to have us chat for once. We were daring each other to have us chat for about a year now.
Yeah, correct. And then all sorts of things happen, but we are here, and I'm very grateful that you are able to join me. So you specialize in helping people deal with sort of tax matters, or you understand the tax code very well. So I mean, the thing is, my first question, if I may, is how can we burn it all down so we don't pay tax? Do you have an idea?
Well, the theory is either tax is theft, or there are a bunch of theories like that. So, or even the tax revolt. One of the best tax revolts or examples of a tax revolt that actually worked very well was the ETOLs in Johannesburg. Right, they noticed that
Right.
the gross compliance that a lot of people decided not to participate anymore, and they had to end it. And it was so successful that they tried to launch it in Cape Town, and Cape Town was like, "Nah, we're not going to play that game." And so that's one form of tax revolt that did work. But the problem with a serious tax revolt, in that we are really not going to play part, is going to require a large part of the private sector to actually play part of this game, because most of the tax revenue collected is collected on personal income tax, and that's collected from pay as you earn. Right, it's
Correct.
not collected from provisional tax. So that means where most of the pay as you earn is being deducted from or withheld, all those companies will have to say, no, we're not going to pay SARS for the next 2 or 3 months. And that's going to require an entire, either a very loud voice, and then it spreads to other listed companies that just decides collectively they're not going to withhold the pay as you earn. And so I don't think we are that organized as the private sector to pull something like to pull off something like that.
I agree. I unfortunately, and a lot of these corporates are actually sort of vested into the existing political structure as well. So it'll be against their best interests, through the licensing regime and regulation regime that they love so much to, get all the other competition out of the economy. So of course it's not going to happen. But I actually heard Darby Root, an economist, well-known economist, and he says I think he told me SARS needs about 50 billion rand on a sort of rolling daily basis to sustain its operations every day of the year. So if a large portion of people pay tax on the very last day it's due, like you actually screw up the processes completely. And it's not a tax revolt, but it really does put sand in the gears, so to speak, of SARS. So that's another way perhaps to do it.
Yeah, I will add a caveat to that. One of my more infamous statements, which a lot of people will disagree with me about, is that if SARS was worse than they are, we would have been in a much worse position in the past than we have been. SARS is an organization that do collect tax revenue, and that money lands in the hands of obviously government. Essentially, if SARS did a bad job at collections, and they didn't replace Tomoyane with Edward Kieswetter, the organization itself, a country, if it needs its tax revenue to do something publicly with being able to pay the welfare, the welfare to the many, etc., etc. In order to do that, they need the tax revenue. Otherwise, they're going to have to borrow from the monetary. You have to print more cash, and
Yeah.
so essentially, SARS being you need a strong SARS. And if we had a worse SARS, if SARS was really bad at collections, we could have been in a much worse position than we are today. So it's kind of like It's I have to take the middle road, right? Where you know, what do you want? Do you want the country to completely collapse because it can't generate, it can't collect tax revenue? And on the other side, you want to lower the tax rates to make people actually come back and want to do stuff, productively in South Africa.
Yeah, no, it's a very good point. It's a very good point. If SARS was not efficient, the irony is not lost on us that it is the most efficient sort of state institution, which goes to show that all the rest of it is a choice and not mere incompetence. But if SARS was run like ESCOM, I think we would be in a debt spiral that would eclipse Venezuela. We would have hyperinflation. We
Yeah.
would have all sorts of other shocks to the system that maybe are still coming, despite the best interests of Edward Kieswetter. But I think you're completely right in that regard. Unfortunately, it still doesn't make me want to pay tax in the slightest.
Yeah, yeah, no, 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 and don't get me wrong, right? There are countries where, let's say, the tax works well. I mean, you can't draw like this is not a fair comparison in all areas, but if you just take government trust and the tax rate of the Nordic countries, right? We're not comparing anything else but that. Trust in government and the tax rate. The Nordic countries, Scandinavian countries, have income tax rates up to 57%.
Hmm.
But the people are comfortable with paying that high amount of tax because of what they get in return, right? So there are countries where the tax rates are high, but the citizens are okay to pay the tax. You can see what's happening in the UK, where the tax rates are high, but people are leaving in droves because people in the UK don't feel like they're getting what they're paying for,
Hmm.
right? So, but those Scandinavian countries have the opposite, which have the opposite situation where the tax rates are high, but the people are happy to live there and pay the tax because of the call it societal returns.
Yeah, in some senses, but also, okay, not recently, but places like Sweden and Finland and Norway, I mean, they are 99% white Norwegians, right? They are 99% Finnish. It's much easier to have a social contract and a social compact with people who live and behave like you do, right? But watch this space. I'm telling you now, in 5 to 10 years, maybe in Sweden, there's not going to be a tax revolt, but I think there'll be a mass exodus of people because of immigration that has happened over the course of the last 15 years. And they're going to say, oh, look, we're paying lots of taxes, but services are worse because there's more people. And the people that are coming are not providing the resources to fund those services as well. So it's a very small, narrow contextual calculation. A much
Mm,
the population, relatively small population, high trust, high taxation, great social benefits. I can live with that.
mm,
But it's very, very brittle. And I
mm.
think they're going to learn a lesson, especially Sweden. The Danes and Norwegians actually I don't think, have the same issue.
Yeah, it's I mean, you look at Japan with I think you call it homogeneous society.
Correct.
The social contract is throughout. So that's a very good point. In South Africa, we do have the calling card, the Rainbow Nation, and that calls for different opinions across different from people with different histories, different backgrounds, different upbringings, etc., etc., which makes it hard to apply one solution to all, right?
Yeah. No, of course. No, of course it does. It's not easy at all to run a multi-ethnic, multi-religious society unless you are like the UAE, which has 0% tax, right? So you invite everyone in, make your business. We will charge tax on consumption or on land value. I'm not too sure exactly how they do it. The income is
Mm,
yours, but you'll never have the right to vote. You can't marry a Muslim person if you're not Muslim. You can't practice your religion openly in the streets, etc., etc., etc. So you have the downside, the trade-offs to a low taxation regime. You need natural resources that are used and a fund that is used, but then also you limit the rights of the people who actually live there. So you're purely an economic zone, which has its
mm,
benefits and its downsides as well. So, yeah, I mean, I can talk about tax very long for a very long time and what it means. But for South Africa, there is no easy way to actually do taxation well. We have a spending problem, not a tax problem.
Mm, mm. One of the points that I've made in the past is that I can foresee a world where the company tax rate, if you want to have a very productive private sector, even more than what we already have, is to, and they've already dropped it from 28 down to 27%. I think it makes absolute sense to drop it down to 25%. Maybe
Hmm.
even be if we get a different sort of treasury or different finance minister who says, I'm going to make the company tax rate 20%. My goodness, will you have more people want to start businesses and actually run, because now it's 20%. I mean, at that tax rate, you are literally saying, please run your business in South Africa. That's comparative to some of the world's best places to operate. And in South Africa, also, the entry requirement of doing business in South Africa, at least if it's just CIPC and you're not running any other sort of business that require different sort of licenses, the entry to business in South Africa is very low, right? It's 150 Rand to register a company, 75 Rand
Yeah.
to do a name reservation. So your starting point to actually be a productive business is very low. The barriers are very low, except for there's obviously bureaucracies in certain other industries. But the company tax rate, I feel like, is a lever that I don't see government is eager to pull at it. But I think there are players in all spheres in South Africa who says, but a lower company tax rate makes a lot of sense. Individuals, unfortunately, are going to bear the brunt. I feel like individuals, whilst we in America, they're already seeing the job losses. In South Africa, whilst we are still, the employment situation in South Africa is still a tricky situation. They still need to collect from individuals. So I don't think that is one that necessarily will come down soon. But definitely on the business side, that is one lever that I think if they pull that, that will attract a lot of people to want to do business in South Africa.
Yeah, it's a little bit like I had a conversation with the chap on the show called Dean Haystack, and maybe I was a little bit too forthright in my views because he had these ideas of like campaigns about buying South African made products and all that, and I was admittedly a bit dismissive. I did invite him back on, and I said, I think it's fine, but the leverage for this is so low that it's almost pointless. Like, and I'll have the same argument for you, Andre. Yes, we can tinker around the edges of like the tax rate percentage points here and there. But if you don't fundamentally take away the cancer that's preventing economic growth, it doesn't actually matter. Right.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
and and the cancer is hostility to enterprise. The cancer is hostility to production and value creation and industrialization and foreign direct investment. Take away that hostility, who gives a shit what the tax rate is? People will
it's
work it out themselves through different structures.
I'm gonna align to what you're saying, and I agree with you on this point. The number of young professionals that I did the taxes for in my in Ihafu in the past was all or a lot of them are IT guys, software developers, a photographer, people who your laptop lifestyle people, right?
Sure.
Or they might be marketing. If a marketing person, a software person, all those guys look for a job in South Africa, that's going to pay them somewhere between 15K and 50K a year. Okay, so it's not it's decent for South Africa, but that same marketing person with that skill, whatever, maybe they just finished uni, then apply to 100 different places across Europe and America. They live in South Africa, so they're earning foreign currency in South Africa, and now they're earning triple, four
Yes.
times, but getting to pay South African lifestyle, living on a South African lifestyle expenses, right? But with a foreign income, those opportunities are so it's yes, you're right. The competitive landscape in South Africa is ruined by kind of like an anti and almost an anti-capitalist, we don't want you to do business in South Africa system.
Sure.
But then you have pockets of groups and pockets of individuals who are taking advantage of that, where cool, I'll then work for a foreign company. South African companies are not paying good salaries unless you work for a massive company that has very deep pockets, and they are
Correct.
coining it. So there are, but I'm talking about the 5%. It's not a large amount of people that can do what I'm suggesting.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And I think, as with all problems in South Africa, all the stuff is very easily solvable if you just have the will to do it. But without being political, there's very little will to change anything going forward. Rowan in the comments says, all we need to do really is to focus on becoming a high trust society and everything else will sort itself out. I completely agree. How do you create a high trust society is by sort of constricting the freedoms of people and focusing on a goal. And if we all agree on the goal, we pursue it. If you don't want to pursue it, get out. So you actually need to constrict the sort of human rights regime of South Africa to become a high trust society. You go to Singapore, you want to become an immigrant, sure, but these are the rules. And if you don't do them, out. Simple as that. You go to England, oh yeah, no, create a caliphate in the middle of Birmingham. It's perfectly fine. That is a problem just waiting to explode. So yeah, you create a high trust society by actually doing the stuff well first, so people can trust the system, and then you build a high trust society. So I agree with Rowan. I just think it's a bit ass backwards the way he frames it, if I may say that.
Yeah, I'll add to that. I mean, we look at the, like, for some reason, one of the South African politicians, the health minister, was like, NHI, and let's take the medical aid tax credits from the people who are paying medical aid that works in the private medical, and then using that to fund the NHI. And then we compare it to how the NHI is going in the UK, and it's like, is this really a good model that will work for us? And I don't want to hamper on too much on this point, but I mean, the NHI budget, they still don't know what it's going to cost to run. Some people are saying 200 billion a year. Some people are saying $1 trillion a year, and it's somewhere in that. And the total medical aid tax credits that's available, that's essentially given as a credit to South African citizens who are paying medical aid, is only 32 billion. So it's like, you want to take away a definite definite benefit to individuals and give it to something where the outcome is not just unsure or unclear, but is also marred by the Tembisa scandal. And it's like there's a saying in business that goes, you don't have a guaranteed expense if you don't have a guaranteed income.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's no guarantee of the outcome. So why would you create a guaranteed expense for the individuals on the medical aid side?
Correct. And the medical aid credits of 32 billion belong to people who probably produce 50% of income tax, 60% of income tax, which is the greatest revenue generator for the state. So if you take away the medical credits, okay, you're taking away 32 billion rand from the system, but you're possibly taking away half a trillion rand a year because these people are just going to move somewhere else. They're not going to stay here without healthcare. So you can see the short-term anti-value ideology rearing its head all the time. And these are the things that can be solved, again, very easily by people who just have common sense. But hopefully that will happen soon. But anyway, Andre, enough about taxes. We all hate paying them. And hopefully you help your clients pay far less than necessary. Tax avoidance is legal. Tax evasion is not. The difference between those two is how much you pay your accountant. But anyway, let's talk about the future of taxation through AI, because you have this very interesting idea that we spoke about briefly before we started, where you said, well, if AI does take jobs, how can you tax an algorithm, right?
Yeah.
Tell us a little more about that.
So I mean, I made this video like just this week, and I'll pass you the link after the episode. But essentially, what's gonna happen is you've got a company or a small business, and this applies to any business around the world that's using AI, quote unquote, employees, right? So you're paying to use these AI employees, these AI agents. They're becoming more autonomous. And recently, the NVIDIA CEO on stage said, AI is not a tool. AI is in fact becoming workers capable of using tools.
Yes.
Now what happens is AI is an expense. So if I'm earning 100 rand and I don't have to spend that money on people, I can spend that money on AI tools, and then my profit is zero, or a little bit, or less. I don't have to take a profit. I can live off the company's, whatever the company's valuation. And then there aren't employees getting the money. So firstly, how do the employees get paid who used to be paid by that company? Firstly, so how
Hmm.
do they earn a living? Now you're getting into a question of universal basic income, or like a stock file situation where there's a pool of money that gets distributed according to the community. So there's the individual income issue, but also, if an AI is producing the income, but they can't earn an income because they're not a legal person, there's no tax revenue collected. So
Correct.
there's no personal income tax, and there's less company income tax because the company is posting less profits or declaring losses or low profits. So the biggest tax revenue is suddenly shrinking because AI employees are replacing the human employees. So you're creating a worldwide erosion of a tax base. And that's not an easy problem to solve because people are holding on to this AI is a tool paradigm, and it just doesn't work. It's not a good long-term solution. And I'll say, the my predictions is, globally, at least not in South Africa necessarily, but or in the larger part of Africa, but at least in the global north, in the next 3 to 5 years, you're going to have more autonomous humanoids capable of working in factories and in workplaces, humanoids in households, and that means by estimates 5 to 10 years, what is there? How do you what tax revenue is going to be, or solve the income side for individuals? How do they earn a living? How do they pay for their lifestyle? And two, where does the tax revenue go to, or how is tax revenue generated?
Yeah. So interestingly, right, I think you've hit on something that I haven't really thought about before in terms of there's always been tax, right? To go back thousands of years, every single empire has had tax in some sense. On consumption or on value of land or whatever the case might be. And for the past 100 years, based on the sort of business, global banking system, we wanted to tax productivity of people, right? So income or corporate tax or profit tax or whatever the case might be. I think actually what AI is going to do, based on what you're saying, is that there will need to be either a reevaluation of what productivity is and how to tax that, or the nation state itself won't matter. We're just going to have a whole bunch of maybe micro states that have the energy required to run these sort of things. And you'll have some sort of basic needs that will be met in some way. So we're quite far away from that. But
Yeah, yeah,
you're absolutely right in a sense that 5 years ago, I had 5 employees. Now I don't need any for the stuff that I do. My AI does the editing, does my transcriptions, does my image generation, does all sorts of things, my emails. What that's five taxable incomes that are no longer taxable anymore.
yeah. And some people will make the argument that those 5 people that you used to employ are now earning an income elsewhere, but the problem is proliferating, right? The problem
Mm,
is, it repeats itself, and the more it repeats itself, the more it whittles down. So it's like, sure, you can move around, but how many times can you move around until you are no longer economically valuable?
yes.
you know and so essentially, and this is what Mo Gordat, he's one of the uh he used to work with one of the big AI firms, and he's now, um he writes a lot of books. Mo Gordat, anyway, I can't remember who he worked for, but he said the next 5 years, 5 to 10, but I would rather say five to play on the side of caution. The next 5 years, the world is going to experience some sort of dystopia where we shift from a world what we were used to, people working for companies, people working for themselves, people being the productive side, people earning an income, people able to pay for their life, to this transition period until you get to a stage where, wait, but there isn't money going to these people anymore because they aren't economically participating. And either turn this into a very big small business thing, but over time we head towards a utopia situation where the cost of your physiological needs are extremely low. So you
Yeah.
just need a basic income to survive, and then you've got more time to do whatever you want. But it's going to take a transition period. And luckily, here's the benefit of being in South Africa. That problem might only hit us in 5 years from now. That problem around the world is going to be around here in 2 to 3 years. Imad Mustak, he wrote a book called The Last Economy. He predicts the end of capitalism within 3 years.
Through sheer abundance, you're saying. So there won't be any, because capitalism is the allocation of scarce resources, right? So you're saying, or
Correct.
what his argument is, I assume, is that there won't be any more scarce resources. I mean, there would be at a top level, but it wouldn't be energy, it wouldn't be labor.
It's essentially what he's saying is GDP is a terrible measurement of productivity in a world where intelligence is the productive activity.
Very true.
And so you can't use GDP as a fair measurement. And then the second argument that he makes is it's in a post-scarcity world, because all AI needs is energy and water, and maybe some land. We need some data centers in South Africa. Come on, let's play the game. But hopefully we'll get some in the next year or two. But the point is, we're gonna go into or at least globally, we're gonna head into a world that feels nothing like it used to feel in the past. And people are kind of not sure. There's a lot of people who are too hype about it, who's saying, oh, AI will solve all problems. And then you've got other people who say it's Skynet and it's going to be at the end of the world by 2030. And here we are in Africa going like, what can we pragmatically and practically do about this? And does South Africa have a part to play?
Well, it would be nice if we didn't have load shedding first, right? Although that seems to have been solved. We're still dealing with like 1850 problems.
I know. I do want to say this. I mean, I made the joke with I'm having these calls to form a little South African AI council. And one of the guys went to China and came back to South Africa. And we made the analogy, or I made the analogy after the call, that it's almost like when you go to China and you come back to South Africa, it's almost like you go to a country where there's cars and then you come back to a country that's still running around on horses.
Correct. I've been there. I know the feeling.
Have you played the game? I'm not sure if you're a gamer, but have you played the game Civilization?
Many years ago.
Okay, so Civ 6 is I play it every now and then. It's such a great game, very addictive. It causes you to press, click now and continue. But one of the themes about the game is if you want to destroy another nation or just beat them in the game, all you need to do is just be more technologically advanced. That's it. Either technologically advanced, religiously advanced, or culturally advanced, or some form of those three things. And one of the reasons for me starting this council is to say, one of the good opportunities, sorry, I'm going to digress. BlackRock, I don't know if you saw this in the news, is going to buy South African bonds. Mm-hmm. They are one of the biggest financiers of data centers in America. So what do you think are they going to do with the money that they push into South Africa? They're going to invest. They're going to say, we want data centers in SA, but we want to fund it. It must be ours.
Correct. Yeah.
And I'm saying, listen, that's one. But also, we need to play the game, because I was saying South Africa produces some of the world's cheapest and most abundant solar power, right? Mm-hmm. If we're able to kind of figure out how to do this solar thing properly, we could kind of deal with the load shedding issue, but also um, be a provider of renewable energy for African data centers. You know,
Yeah, no, I would agree with. Sorry, the line went a little bit hazy there, but I think I know what you're saying. But yes, I mean, South Africa has missed the boat on many things, like fracking, for example. 20 years ago, if we had fracking 20 years ago, we wouldn't have had any load shedding whatsoever. We missed the boat on sort of oil exploration and yeah. Anyway, we missed the boat on a lot of things in this country because we don't think. And I think we're going to miss the boat on data centers as well because it is such a big investment the government would want to cut or wanted to have a joint public private partnership or some bullshit like that. Whereas I found in America, and especially under Trump's administration, you got David Sachs, who's like the chief czar of AI, you got Elon Musk, who's fully invested. What it appears to me is happening in America is that they're looking less at the world as a zero sum game in terms of political influence and infrastructure, and they're looking at, okay, well, if we just have abundance here, right, and we go to Mars and we sort of exploit the minerals on asteroids using SpaceX and AI and Tesla power banks and whatever you want, like America doesn't actually give a shit what China is doing because America's on Mars and like mining asteroids and whatever the case might be. So it would be a good thing for America to just focus on that abundance and not see the world as a zero sum game. And I think you can do that through technology for the most part. But it seems to me they sort of maybe the only country that's grappling with this. Obviously, China's grappling with it as well. But I wish we had that mindset here, but we can't even agree to sort of not have load shedding for like a year at a time. So I like your optimism, but I don't know if I share it.
yeah. Look, I'm a pragma I'm essentially a pragmatist first. So I'm like, practically, what can we do? What is the South African situation? And then, is there something that we could do? And I feel like, um, I've been watching different, whether it's the different news channels, mainstream media, etc. What sort of coverage do we have on anything tech related that might even be on the second page, right, in South African news? And
Hmm.
if you just look at the second page, there's almost no mention of anything AI or tech related that's happening on the global sphere. And I feel like, because we're not talking about it, we are also not seeing it. And that's why I think there are pockets of people who's participating, but I'm like, come on, like, it's like, do you know that meme where the big maniki is pushing the smaller one with a stick, and then it says do something?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the meme. Come on, like, come on, participate. Like, we sent Mark Shuttleworth up into space. Christian Barnard did the first heart transplant. South Africa was one of the first countries to give up its nuclear warheads. We've done really cool stuff in the past, and it's like, almost, essentially, ChatGPT has been around for 3 years. Okay, and I feel like if we don't do something, let's say in 2026, meaningfully, we will have missed the boat completely, because then the entire country is just waiting for 2029 to see what happens. And by then it's going to be too late. By then it's like, oh, okay, America's doing its thing. China's robots is everywhere around the world, and because of BRICS, we will get the robots cheap. Europe will regulate everything, and the entire global south will be like, "Heh." So,
As it always as it always has been, Andre. Nothing new.
nothing new, but I'm like, we could at least try to be recognized for doing something special. One of the things that I share is that, if a collective effort is made in South Africa at solving or playing either on the energy side or on the telecommunication side, like our fintech, we've got some of the best fintech in the world. Um,
Hmm.
but a mix of either telecommunications, lower barrier to access, to get access to the AI tools and whatnot. There's a possibility for South Africa to do something cool, but it's going to take a lot of effort, and I'm just one person, you know. So I guess that's where my optimism comes from. Is like, yeah,
Andre, don't worry. We have the esteemed Minister of Technology and Science called Blaine Nzimande, who thinks Stalin was a great guy and communism is fantastic, and we need to do that again. So yeah, I trust him fully to understand what a data center is, let alone to know how email works. I'm sure he does. I hope he does. I know quite a few of them who don't know how email works, by the way. So we have a skills issue more than anything else. And
mm,
until we upgrade the software of the political structure of South Africa, we're going to miss the boat constantly on all of these things. But there is some hope. It's called balkanization, right? And then through balkanization, maybe we can have pockets of forward thinking people who can actually build shit that works properly. And those things could be a gleaming, shining, castle on the hill somewhere that other people aspire to. But for the moment, I think we are so stuck in hardware like Windows 95, whereas everyone else is on Mac iOS 26 with the liquid glass display. And that's
yeah.
and that's a cultural issue that we need to fix somehow. I propose violence and coercion, but other people think that's not fair. So we we stuck for now.
Yeah, I mean, what one of the and this is it's just a framing that I had in my mind. You know, the thing that can hurt a lion. You know, maybe a lion is a bad animal to use in this frame. But if a lion were to step on a thorn, the entire line is going to be, it's going to, it's going to react. The paw is going to lift up and it's going to be like, but it's a small thing that happens. Like let's say for example, um you've got a small biotechnical firm in South Africa does something really cool in a partnership with Neuralink in the US, and suddenly, you know, people who have gone blind in South Africa can now get the first robotic, let's call it robotic eye in South Africa. Like
Mm,
something like that will happen. And so either what's going to happen is if we don't move collectively fast enough, what's going to happen is that firm will then get bought by an American company, and we just export that singular product. So
correct.
essentially, what I'm hoping for and pushing is to say, can we get that example, that thorn, and make those thorns appear kind of everywhere? That it and then it gets a little bit, it puts the nation, I mean, we do it with sports, right? For like, that's one thing that at least, hey, look at us, we won the World Cup, hey, look at us, Bafana is doing really well. But it feels like we haven't had something like that in the recent past. What do go into global news is super political. The trade wars between the trade between Donald Trump and South Africa were like, okay, we'll take Afrikaners from South Africa. Like that's what hits the global news. The Tembisa scandal may have hit global news. Like, we need something in global news from South Africa that is positive, and that's not happening.
Well, because there is very little, very little to be positive about. I'm afraid
Yeah,
to say.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
I'll give you an example from my past. Right, so I was, as everyone knows, chief of staff to the Minister of Agriculture, and one of the main problems we face there, or still facing, is the production of vaccines for animals is basically almost zero. This is through legislation from 1947 and 1974, whereby under sanctions, the state couldn't import any vaccines. So they created these institutions to produce the vaccines and sell the rest at a profit to the rest of Africa. It worked within that context of the time, right? But now, through years of neglect and mismanagement, there's no production of the essential vaccines for animals. If you don't vaccinate animals or you have breakout, you can't export the products to the rest of the world. You can't get forex in. It's a big fuck up. We had so many companies come to us say, listen, we can produce all the vaccines you want. Everything's ready. We just need approval. Not a single meeting to push that forward to get approval. Why? Because the legislation doesn't allow it. If you want to change legislation, it takes 10 years. You need experts and public participation and all of this shit. So, to solve a problem, you're so mired by the process that justifies this Leviathan state of bureaucracy. And the more Leviathan bloats, the less you can actually solve. So all the solutions are there, Andre, in this very small contextual thing that I'm
Yeah,
talking about. All the solutions are there. There's just no will, capacity, management to actually affect it in
yeah,
any
yeah,
whatsoever. And that's the most frustrating part.
yeah, 100%. Like, I mean, I'll given, the more, what's it, the more people you have trying to change a light bulb, the longer it takes, right?
Of
If it's just
course.
one person, they'll change the light bulb, it's done. Um, but
So
this
we
is
agree
where,
dictatorship is the way to go, right?
yeah, exactly. So here's the, well, I'll give you a funny story if you'll let me. One
Of
of
course.
my one one of my friends, he runs an investment company out of Nigeria, and I did a talk in Kenya, and together we were chatting about, but what's the problem with the many political leaders in Africa in general? And this guy, he's very involved in both the political sphere and the investment landscape, and he said, uh, in his words, uh, in Africa, we like it if a leader can dance, if they are charismatic, right? But what he actually wants, and what he said, is what we need in Africa is just a meritocracy. It's sure you
Correct.
can have a we can have a leader that dance, but then the people that are serving or part of that leadership should be a meritocracy, the best of the best inside government. Anyway, that's a side story. So what I meant by the people changing the light bulb, and this is why I think AI is going to shock. I think the moment it starts proliferating and it gets more use cases, especially in South Africa and in the rest of Africa, is it's going to create a shock system. And this is what I mean. Very recently, somebody in America used one of the AI models to reduce their medical bill from $133,000 down to, I think, $50,000.
I
Right.
saw
So
that.
the
Yeah.
AI picked up double codes and everything and fixed an inefficiency. And that's in the
Yes.
private sector. Now here's what politicians don't want to hear. That is a tool that they've got no control over. Now, you can imagine if this tool is in millions of people's hands. Let's say you fix the whole barrier to access, you give everybody access to a device, and you give them cheap data. Hopefully, telecommunications play ball, or Starlink says everybody gets free data. Anyway, what's gonna happen is what happened to me. I'll tell you this. I'm busy with a massive research project. I've been busy with it for a month. If I didn't have access to the LLMs, that same research project, the white paper, would have taken me a year to do. So
Mm.
it's squashing the time by a magnitude of 10. If you, the only reason I'm more optimist than pessimist in this podcast, is that the thing that is not in our control, the AI, if you're productive with it, all of a sudden, even the person with the lowest IQ, as long as they have agency, the capability and the urgency of doing something, they become the most productive person on the team.
Mm.
And what's going to happen globally is, as the access to these models become more available and it's a ubiquitous tool, then you essentially going to have a world where the inefficiencies are so clear, and so um, it's so widespread, but it's going to take time, right? And so that's and kind of like that's the point. So yes, we may maybe collect maybe collectively it's going to take a lot of time, but in small pockets, the I think that is the AI is the enabler, and there's nothing
Sorry, everyone. It seems like Andre has frozen for a moment. Hopefully, it will solve itself very quickly. All right, let's hope he comes back. I'm quite enjoying this, so I really hope we can finish it. All right, he's disappeared. Let's see if he comes back. And for those watching, let me know if you're enjoying this. This is very interesting because essentially, I think I agree with him. I'm quite optimistic, sort of in the long term future, like a decade plus. But in the short term, not so much because I just think there's too much political instability to actually have a coherent way to deal with what Andre is describing, which is basically the labor force will just become much more efficient. And you need to be wary of that, and you must create the circumstances to accelerate that for most people. But here, I was going to tell him that if you think about just Cyril Ramaphosa's 10 years president, what has been pushed through is an extraction model of governance whereby you take more from the people that create the value, expropriation, NHI, that sort of stuff. We need a policy shift where we can help those people create much more stuff. Yeah. So anyway, hopefully he comes back. Let's see if he does. Let me read the comments quickly. One of them says the issue with AI is that there's too much focus on moonshots instead of solving real life urgent problems. Well, I think AI is so new. Like, of course, you're gonna have so many test cases, but over time, it will be better at many things that we can't even fathom at the moment. And I do think it is a product or a technology that will achieve things that we can't even fathom right now. So of course, for now, it seems like it's doing a whole lot of bullshit like AI girlfriends and whatever the case might be. I fully agree, but that's sort of part of the process, right? I mean, when they created the car, there was a lot of different weird ways to make a car, but then over time, the car became standardized, and I think that's what will happen with AI too. It's still in its infancy. Like look at cryptocurrency. When it first started, everyone like created a coin and a token to do this and X, and lots of scams and NFTs and all this shit. But at the end of the day, maybe Bitcoin will be the only one left standing at the end of the day, and that would be useful for everyone. So AI municipal management and control systems do exist, but they've been avoided. Of course, they've been avoided. I mean, let's not forget, right? Let us not forget is that the state bureaucracy is basically a daycare for adults, paid for by taxpayers. So, of course, all the incentives are there to make it less efficient. But again, still very early days. Still very early days. Let me just see if I can get Andre back on. I think I have his number. Let me just find out. Oh, do I have his number? Ah, it appears that I don't. I really thought that I did. Let me send him a demon X. Sorry, everyone. I'll be back right now. unless his internet completely fried for some reason, which I hope is not the case. All right, back to the chat. Let's see. What is your rationale to state bureaucracy now that you mention it? What is my rational solution to state bureaucracy? Well, state bureaucracy is there essentially to pursue what the state wants, right? To pursue what the policy of the states are. So the rational way to run a state bureaucracy is China. Right? Meritocratic, very little corruption, based on key performance indicators, and you try to bring the best and the brightest and pay them a good wage. I mean, that's essentially what you want. You want the state to be a competition for merit to any other private sector, which isn't the case at the moment. So you need a bureaucracy to run things. I sort of agree with that, but why not try and make it as cheaply and as efficient as possible, like every other organization in the world that tries to do the same thing? So what we do here, as someone says, we outsource a lot of the stuff the bureaucracy is supposed to do and give it to consultants for 5 times the price. And that's completely true, by the way. When I worked in the state, there were people whose sole job was to read all the newspapers, cut it out, put it on a piece of paper, scan it, and send it as an email and say, oh, here's the daily media reports about the Department of Agriculture. That's not a real job, let's be honest. Let's see, Andre might be back. Andre, hello.
How's it going? We just lost power in our
In Cape Town.
local yeah, in Cape Town, I think in Edgemead. So sorry for that.
I thought the DA was wonderful, but now he lost power. So same issues as Joe Big, man.
Same issues, man. Yeah. Sorry, I lost. I can't remember where we are dropped off.
No, I can't remember either. But I think you're talking about the fact that you were optimistic, sort of long term. And I was saying to the chat after you dropped off that I'm actually very optimistic about Africa generally long term for a variety of reasons, namely that number one, the most important one, we don't have legacy systems of technology. And I think this is something that is chronically underrated. If you go to the rest of Europe and you go to the East Asia, you go to Thailand, you just see wires everywhere, right? Telecommunication wires, copper wires, whatever, telephone wires, all that shit. And there's a huge incentive just to keep those things going with maintenance and all that. But in Africa, more people have cell phones than landlines because there was no infrastructure for landlines. And I think far more people will have access to the internet through wireless connections like Starlink and things like that. So I think the basis for the evolution of infrastructure technology in Africa is actually more advanced than most of these other countries who have these legacy systems. So I think you and I would agree on that.
Yeah, that's a very good point. One of essentially because a lot of African countries, and I got this, I got these the exact wording from somebody else that I was in a call with, is because a lot of African countries are net importers of existing technology. It means that we can use that technology, we can implement that technology, like you said, without having the backlog of other things that came before it. It's one of the reasons why why the banking system in South Africa is considered one of the best in the world. I mean, we were so quick to jump from checks to having no checks. And in America, they only let checks go in the last 5 years, 20. And to us, that's crazy. We've always been using. What do you mean? We've always had card payments. And then also in another example is in Kenya, the whole money, the mobile money, which didn't really proliferate into South Africa, but because it's just a different system. But they do have bank cards and whatnot, but they are so comfortable with money on their phone. And to me, when I visited Kenya, I'm like, what is this? Yes, M-Pesa. I remember that's what it's called. And so, Yeah, you're 100% right. Essentially, as long as the country has money, the ability to bring these things in, or the citizens have the ability to bring the stuff in, you essentially skipping steps. You're
Correct.
skipping levels. It's like you're in grade 8, and then all of a sudden, because grade 12, no, you didn't have to go through grade 9, 10, and 11. You've got access to. Oh, we'll just skip it. We'll go straight to. We'll go straight to. And here's the other point: is that because the cost of these models, and also the local models that you can run on your computer, or okay, not on your phone yet, the local models that aren't gate kept by the big AI firms, um, they are completely free. So you can get a decently trained AI on your computer for no cost. And so essentially, what and as the models improve, and maybe in African countries, a lot of us will have access to these models at a much cheaper rate compared to what people would pay in Europe or in America. Um, I think ChatGPT is offering their ChatGPT 5, GPT-5 in South Africa for a cheaper rate than in America. And so it's not just the access to the technology that we get jumped onto, but I think the other side, the other point that you made earlier, and that's one thing that the council that I want to start is specifically going to target is, yes, access is fine, barrier to access, and reduce the access and reduce the cost of telecommunications. But the next step to fix, or the obvious next step, is the education. Is how do you use the tool? How do you prompt the system to get the best out of it? Instead of treating it like, because people will speak to it like it's Google. That's the stupidest thing. If I'm raising my daughter, I'm going to tell my daughter, and my daughter is 3, so I'll tell her, I'm not going to tell her to clean the house. I'm going to tell her, here's how you clean your room. Okay.
Mm.
Pick up your toys. Here's a box. And that's how you talk to the LLMs. I mean, and if you're a professional, if you're or professional is the wrong word. If you're a subject matter expert, then you are the best at using the tool, because you can take all your knowledge, all your synthesis, put that into your prompt, and then you get the best results from it, because now you're not being lazy, you're not giving it one line. And just by doing that, you are uh, the amount of productivity, like people say people aren't really that more productive with AI, is because they don't know how to use it, in my opinion, especially productively, just in general use. I'm not talking about people who code with AI. Anyway, I hope, I can talk, I can waffle a lot, waffle on quite a bit, but yeah.
Yeah, but I think we can agree. So it has been an hour, so I don't want to overstep that mark too much, because then people just don't watch at all. It's a bit of a time investment for them. But I think we,
Yeah.
we can agree on two things, right? I think AI will radically shape a revolution in how we think about the world and how we think about labor and things like that. I don't follow a utopian model where I think we're going to have post scarcity. I think that has been trotted out so many times over the centuries that this is just another argument that is going to fall flat. We'll just have scarcity of other stuff, and other stuff will become much more valuable than a salary, for example. But number two, I think. Um, Africa long term is like a big, big investment in the future that could pay off extremely well. And I think we've been held back by bullshit. We've been held back by ideas about the world that don't matter and haven't mattered in many years. But now I think the AI is just going to accelerate that. And for the most part, if you just trust people to do stuff in their own interest, like the ordinary African, the ordinary Nigerian, the ordinary South African, I think the political powers that be will have so much less influence in the future of their countries than ever before, because people realize that they're not actually needed at all for the most part. So I'm quite bullish on Africa. I'm actually quite bullish on our country too. Not in the next 5 years, and I think we will miss the boat once again on data centers or things like that. But I think this is a great boon to humanity, and it has its trade-offs, and we need to be wary of those things. But fundamentally, I think we should embrace it completely.
Yeah, yeah, I'm with you. Yeah, and I agree with you. I think you bring up a very good point. Um, the idea that you don't, I think, and we can wrap up with this. I think the idea that's been sold to many people is that you need the government, right? That's the idea that's been sold to. So you need the government, and what's now happening because of AI, and also people are only realizing this, and this is a good point. People are only realizing this now after it's been around for 3 years, right? And so it's still a very new technology. Look how long it took social media to proliferate and people becoming ubiquitous with its usage, right? Now everybody is on social media, including your auntie that's on Facebook, and so it's the great leveler because because like we said, the government will be needed less because you can just go to but the other thing that's going to crumble is the education system. What do you do with education system if I mean the last point, UCT used to have an AI checker that checks whether you used AI as part of your research papers that you're handing in. They dropped it, I think, a couple of months ago. Why? Because UCT is one of the first universities in South Africa to realize the world is going to be humans plus AI.
Yep.
So they're like, cool, use it, but obviously show your work and whatnot and reference which models you use. But
now we need a completely new understanding of what education is. Is education only memory recall? No, education now is going to be other things other than memory recall. I think that's a good thing. Very good thing.
My opinion is that education it's going to be less about education and more about agency. How do you train people to become active now that you don't need to know everything yourself? Obviously, you need to learn how to read and write and all the basics. So primary education is still really important, but secondary and tertiary is going to become really tricky. Like, I don't know what to tell my daughter to study. How do I have that conversation with her? She's going to study in 20 years. What's that going to look like? She's going to study what? Interplanet, study to go to Mars, right?
Yeah. Go do a BCom,
anyway.
love. Like, go do a BCom. No, BComs won't exist in 10 years. What is there to learn in a BCom? How to do a balance sheet and what a market is. I can learn that in 3 minutes on ChatGPT.
Yeah,
like, it's crazy.
Yeah.
Like,
Exactly.
I really feel so. My kids are going to school for their primary school. All three of them is going to cost me an arm and a leg. But I think for high school, which for the eldest is going to be in about 4 or 5 years, I'm seriously considering homeschooling. Not personally, I'm a terrible teacher and I would never impose that on her. But I think there's going to be AI models, in-house tutoring, online classes that are going to expand her education in 3 hours a day, much more than a full day at St. John's or some fancy private school. And it's going to cost me far less, but she's going to be a much happier, more vibrant person. She's maybe going to be able to work part-time at the age of 14, be a cashier or whatever the case might be. That to me seems far more valuable than spending 9 hours at school and getting up at 6 a.m. on a Monday to do rowing, right? It's very exciting.
Yeah, very exciting, man. And we're both parents, so we can see it,
Yeah, no, I think their lives will be much better than ours, inshallah, God willing.
Yeah, I tell people I tell my mom, but also people who's like 65 and older. You've had a good run. You don't have to worry about the next 10 years. It's the people who are 40 and younger or 50 and younger it's going to be an interesting world that we're heading into. I mean, we grew up with TVs. I mean, you ask a person who maybe was born in the 70s what it was like, and now they also part of the 2020s where AI, and so they grew up with a world where there was no TVs, no cell phones,
Mm-hmm.
and now they are part of a world where it's AI and robotics and all these things. So, yeah, going through so many technological shifts in such a short time.
Yeah, I mean, the only group of people I feel sorry for are the 40-year-olds to the 60-year-olds currently now who do routine work. I think this is going to upend the entire view of what work is. They're going to be replaced by AI, and I don't know what's going to help them out. So I have concerns about that, but I'm not worried about the youth. I think the unemployment rate is bullshit for the most part. I'm not worried about the majority of people. And once Starlink comes in, and if they promise, as they do, to give it out for free to like 5,000 schools or whatever the case might be, the amount of productivity and learning and knowledge and education is gonna do more in a year than the Department of Education can do in 300 years. So just let the people be free, for goodness sake, and life will be
Yeah,
much easier for everyone.
yeah, exactly. Cool.
Excellent.
Roman,
We agree.
like a conversation, man.
Andre, thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate it. Send me all your links, please. I'll put them in the show notes.
100%. I can send them an email if that's cool with you.
100%. That's perfect. Or DM me on X. And for all those watching,
Awesome.
thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the conversation with Andre as much as I did. And hopefully it leaves you a bit more optimistic about the future going into this weekend. So have an excellent weekend, everyone. And yeah, see you next week for another episode of Ordinary People. Bye for now.